In this video, we're going to talk a little bit about exam strategies. Now, all of the certification exams have a very similar feel to them. They're all using the same tester, and the types of questions that get asked are all going to be very similar. They're going to be dealing with things like mass properties, maybe coordinates of a center of mass. In the case of surfacing, you might be asked to take a look at surface area. So make sure you understand what the question is asking first and foremost. So read through the question multiple times if you have to, and kind of get an understanding, a feel for what that question is asking you to do. If it's asking you for surface properties or mass properties, then know where to get that information. So your mass properties are going to be located in your tools dropdown, just as well as your measure. If you have something that you need to measure surface area of, for instance, a rectangle. Now the rectangle is going to be a very simple example. You're not necessarily going to need to measure that because it's going to be a simple calculation. But if you do, you select the surface or the face that you want to measure and you hit the measure tool. This will give you an area for the surface and a perimeter. So keep in mind that when you're dealing with surfacing exams, because we are dealing with surfaces that don't have any mass or thickness, that you most likely will be asked for things like surface area or maybe the length of an edge and so on. So know the types of questions that are going to get asked and know how to use the tools available to you, such as the measure tool. The next thing you need to keep in mind is the amount of time that you can allot to each question. Now, there are certain questions that might take you 5 minutes, and there's certain questions that might take you 50 minutes. So if you come across a question that you can easily answer and breeze right through it, go ahead and answer that question and move on. If you get to a question that is causing you a little bit of trouble, it's better to save it for later, just skip it and continue on with the exam. Because if you have 2 hours for the exam and you end up taking most of that time for one question, let's say it's the second question, and you're not able to get to the rest of your questions, you're going to get a very low score on your exam. If instead you skip it and you're able to answer all the rest of the questions correctly and have to come back and still don't have enough time to finish, you're only going to be missing one question. So make sure that you don't get stuck in the problem solving mode of trying to figure out that question. If it's causing you some trouble, if you don't quite understand what it's asking, just skip it and move on. Just remember at the end of your exam, if you have the time, to always go back through. If you finish your exam, if you finished all of the questions, then start over at the beginning again, and very least just check your answers. Make sure you've answered each question and make sure that the answers seem reasonable. A lot of times after you've answered a few questions, you might think of a different way to do a previous question. So it's always good to just recheck the questions and recheck your thought process. There are a lot of times when you might finish the exam in half the time, and you can actually go back through and rework all those questions. If you have the time and you have any questions or any doubt that you may have done something wrong, then by all means, rework that question. There's not going to be any penalty involved. Just make sure you always keep an eye on the clock and you know how much time you can devote to it. So once you've had the time to go through the entire exam, answer all the questions and make sure that your thought processes are correct and that you've been able to check everything, you submit the exam and everything is done.